Okay, people. So, today is now, I haven't gone to sleep yet. It's like going on 1:15 in the morning here. And, all I'm doing is drawing lines. Seriously, that's all I'm doing, people. I'm just drawing lines through months of hard work. Even though the rule book says, I can't see, people, I'm serious, it's so hard for me to see. Even though the rule book says there is no limited amount to the number of pages when you submit a notice of claim if you're paying for it. Because I wrote it out, it took 3 months to do, or whatever it was. I did it over the winter, long hours, right? Read the Criminal Book of Canada like it was a Bible, a whole bunch of other books in here. You know, had my trusty thesaurus, my trusty dictionary, my law books, you know. Spent hours and 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 hours to do this. I get to the courthouse, go to file it, right? And then, you know, because I'm on low income, right? I was going to maybe they said try and put it in without having to pay, because they asked me how I'm doing it. And I said, well, I've got money, I'm paying. I had $400 on me, $200 for Fraser Health Authority and $200 for CIBC Bank. And they said, well, before you pay, you know, fill out the application to try and put it in without paying. I said, okay. So I did that. The only thing is, under the rule book, it was too many pages, so it wouldn't have been able to go through that way, so I had to pay. So I paid. Because under that rule book, if you pay, there's no number of pages, people. Limited. It's unlimited amount of pages in order to file a lawsuit. So it goes in front of the masters, and the masters, what does he do? He just blows it off as whatever, tells me to write this down to 20 pages, which I'm already at like 17, and I still got that much more to go. And I'm really trying to stay positive here, people. I'm really trying to stay positive, but, you know, like, these lawyers, they get paid to protect criminals. They get paid to prevent malpractice lawsuits from going forward. They get paid to hide the mistakes within the corporation. They get paid to be mischievous and maleficent and all these other things just so that the corporation wins, right? Even though the corporation is supposed to be serving the public for its health interest, right? But you can see my health deteriorating, people. It's deteriorating more and more and more and more, right? Because they don't want people like me talking about old people being targeted in hospitals by, you know, grubby freaking whatever, you know, looking for money, keeping them illegally detained, you know, and doping them up and making it so that they sell their houses. And because at the end of the day, that's what's going on. You know, for every 1,000 people, 10 people are getting locked up and losing their homes and their assets, right? And every now and then, they'll throw a bone to an Eleanor, right? Because she's a head nurse, so she can run the halls with her scouts and do whatever she does, right? We're talking billions of dollars, people. Billions of dollars. These judges and these masters, they make good money. They make like $500,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. Okay, maybe $400,000. I doubt it's $400,000. It's probably 6 or 7. To read, people. That's what they get paid for. To read. And that master's sitting up there telling me there's not going to be a judge that's going to take the time. It's 3 hours. 3 hours 4 at best to read this. Because it's not worth the judge's time. Because he's trying to save the taxpayers' money. What taxpayers' money is he saving? When he gets a paycheck anyway, it doesn't really matter how much he reads. He still gets that paycheck. So what it does is it makes me think about the nonprofit back in the day when I put that proposal in front of the City Surrey Council for that after-hour fundraiser that was supposed to go for a year on the weekends, right? Stay open till 3 o'clock instead of 2. I wrote the 50-50 that could have generated up to $80,000 to $100,000 within the 1 year, just doing that 1 extra hour on the weekend. It was approved on a provincial level back in 2001, because I remember Uncle John and I, we used to watch the Legislative House of Assemblies, and you know, it was always, you know, bars. I don't find them intimidating, so it was something that I wanted to do. So when they started talking about, bringing in after hours and making it so that it was possible for people to do that kind of stuff, I thought, great, that's up my alley. But they brought in this clause where the cities, more than one, can, deny these proposals as they're coming in. Well, they did that. They denied mine. And the hotel that was the host to this pilot project fundraiser told me, because I had to talk to cops too, right? I had to talk to cops and all this other crap, right? They like to send you off to go talk to cops when you want to do something, right? That's how they intimidate you, right? So I talked to this Corporal Surreal. Anyway, long story short, it never got approved on a city level. It got approved, the 50-50, like I said before, got approved on a provincial level through the Gaming Enforcement Branch. But the city itself shut it down because they wouldn't approve that 1 extra hour on a Friday and a Saturday, right? And the bar owner at that time told me basically it had to do with the cops, because the cops didn't want to work that extra hour. They wanted the bars to flood out at 2 in the morning, so it would be nice and quiet on the streets at 3:30 in the morning or whenever it is people go home, unless, of course, they go to an after hours. They'll let illegal after hours stay open, but they won't allow legal after hours to stay open, right? And they sure in the hell didn't want a nightclub staying open till 3 o'clock in the morning, because the bar owner said that the cops would have had to, work a little harder for that 1 hour. Well, it kind of makes me think it's like the judge. These judges, they make good money. We'll just round it off at $600,000 a year. Well, hell, we'll even do it $500,000 a year. Guaranteed income. Taxpayers are paying it. So it's not like it's coming out of your pocket, because it's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. And that's what they do. They sit in a courthouse day after day reading. So after a while, they don't want to read any more than they have to. Even though the rules in the rule book tell them that they're supposed to read it if it's submitted. All they have to do is have some haughty dude, get up there and say, oh, nobody wants to read that, and you should be grateful that a lawyer read that from your opponent, and, if you were smart, you're going to go home and you're going to, take a ruler, and you're just going to wipe out 3 months of hard labor and 35 years of memories. Just cross them out, people. Just cross out all these memories, cross out everything. Because it doesn't mean anything, right, to this judge. Because he gets a paycheck anyway. He doesn't have to do the work. Or masters or whatever, right? They don't have to. They only have to do half of it. Because they're going to get their paycheck anyway. And if they're in partnership with the corporations, which we know the court system isn't perfect, well, who do you think's going to win? Certainly not Uncle John. Certainly not us as a family. So, I don't know, people. Like, this makes me ill. Like, literally, you don't know how fucking ill I feel. Just taking a ruler and just erasing everything for the convenience of somebody that makes $500,000 a year and doesn't want to do their job, basically. That's basically what it's boiling down to. Right? And they make you feel like shit. As if it's your fault. Right? As if you're incompetent. You're the idiot. Right? You're the fool. Right? So, I don't know. That's how I'm feeling right now at 1:30 in the morning on September 11th. After I go to bed, I'm going to get up in the morning, grab my trusty ruler, and start all over again. And just keep on drawing lines. Right? Like throwing my life away. That's what it is. It's just, getting a little closer to that coffin. Right? Because they don't want to know the truth. That's the thing. It's staring in their fucking face. And they don't want to know it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to know it. Because all they care about is that $500,000 paycheck. And as long as the economy is being stimulated by those old folks being locked up in those old folks' homes, right? With nobody to rescue them. Because even the court system doesn't care about them. If that's what it takes to make the judge get paid, why would the judge want to rock that boat? Because again, you're talking about billions of dollars in taxes. When it comes to city taxes and, the government makes on those house sales and, just people's wages for being crooks. Like, serious. Alright? And of course you can't write that stuff down. Because nobody's going to read it anyway. Even if you were to write it, they wouldn't read it. Like, seriously. It's all lines. Most of it's lines. It makes me wonder why I wrote it. If all I was going to do is just draw a bunch of fucking lines through it, why did I write it? Let me read a little more for you. This is page 10. Shimei Chorney also went into the ambulance with John Duncan to provide moral support for him. This is when we called initially. John and I, we talked about it. I encouraged him to go. Finally, he agreed. We helped him with a shower. We gave him some soup, and we had him lay in his bed and wait quietly for the ambulance, which was called under a non-emergency phone call, because I didn't want him to sleep the way I slept when I caught that flu and get dehydrated and quite possibly die on me because he was sleeping for long periods of time. So we agreed that he should go to the hospital just in case, right? What a mistake that was, people. Serious. I regret that day so much. Anyway, Shimei Chorney also went to the ambulance with John Duncan. This is everything that I'm crossing out. To provide moral support for him and to make sure that he settled in at the hospital once they arrived, so that he knew he was not alone in the initial stages of his hospital admittance. I'm getting really tired. A, that was 34, now we're going into 34A. Which is a crime! You don't put A's, or B's, or C's, or D's, or E's. It's supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Anyway, prior to everyone leaving, in terms of they got him now and they're leaving, right? Leaving the house. The ambulance attendant asked for Mr. John Duncan's identification, to which Shimei Chorney provided that to them, but the ambulance attendant gave it back to Judy Chorney once he was done with it and insisted that it stay at home. But isn't it interesting how I'm being accused of stealing his wallet? Where it's written in here, which of course has been probably crossed out, because that's not pertinent information, right? It's just the fact that it's out there and I'm being accused of stealing his wallet, even though he lived in my house for 23 years. And the ambulance attendant told my daughter to put it back where she got it from once he got the numbers from whatever it was that he needed from the ID. Right? Shimei Chorney has stated that the ride to the hospital was good with no disruptions and that Mr. John Duncan was comfortable with the situation at hand. Shimei Chorney also stayed for several hours with Mr. John Duncan after arriving at the hospital. I'm drawing lines. Judy Chorney visited John Duncan the following day with her grandson, Andre Chorney. Mr. Duncan was still in the hallway, hooked up to an IV drip, and was not allowed to get up to use the washroom. He was asked to urinate in a bedpan, despite being in a high-traffic area of the hospital right next to the doctor's station. Mr. Duncan was still, at this time, people, he was still coherent, aware, and communicative, and he was also in good spirits despite being humiliated over privacy issues relating to washroom needs. This is all getting wiped out. This is not allowed to be into the notice of claim. Right? Judy Chorney spoke with one attending doctor who asked John Duncan to open his mouth so that he could look inside it, and then proceeded to ask Mr. Duncan that if he should go into cardiac arrest if Mr. Duncan wanted to be revived. Mr. Duncan agreed with enthusiasm as he cracked jokes about his situation. Because he was trying to be positive, people, because I told him, look, John, you need to go. You know, I don't want anything bad to happen to you, right? You're a little loopy, right? You know, this has been a really bad cold for me. And God forbid, if something bad happens, you just, you know, go to the hospital and, you know, I'll see you back here in a couple of days. Ooh, what a mistake that was, people. Mr. John Duncan received treatment at the Surrey Memorial Hospital for 2 days in the hall. This one I did write down in my amendment, and was told not to get up, which would have made his legs become very stiff and uncomfortable, right? Mr. Duncan was on a gurney in the hall where the whole length of either side of the hallway was lined with other patients on gurneys. Anyway, people, like I said, I don't even know why I wrote this stuff. If a judge that makes $500,000 a year, or a master's that makes $500,000 a year, and they don't want to read it because they're bored with their job, right? Or they can take advantage of it, like those cops didn't want to do that 1 extra hour so that $100,000 could go into the community for the people that actually need it the most, like my daughter, who I haven't seen now for a couple of weeks, which is getting to be quite concerning. You know, who are they going to say it's her fault that she disappeared with her brain damage? I had somebody call from urology or something, neurology, something to do with the brain. They want to do some brain tests on her because, you know, I guess they watch my videos and they hear me talk about how my daughter is brain damaged, wandering the city streets of Surrey, you know, unprotected by the Fraser Health System because there's nothing that they can capitalize off of in terms of money, unlike Uncle John, right? They want to keep that money, people. They want to keep that money. That's why they got me running all these lines through all these papers now. And they want to keep that money. You know what, people? As a matter of fact, you know, I'm reading this now, right? And like, he got worse by the third or fourth day of being in there. Because my kids, I made my kids go like, I made sure that one, if not two of them, like two times two visitors, right, a day. So in other words, it would be Marcane and Tisha one day, and then it would be Shimei and me the next day, like at different times though, right? Not normally at the same time, right? So, you know, Shimei would show up at 1 and I would show up at 7 or something like that. Or Tisha would show up at 4 and Marcane would show up at 2. You know, like, you know what I mean? Very seldom did we ever show up together, right? And every day he had a visitor from us, right? And, you know, I'm reading this as I'm crossing it out, right? And I'm like, well, why can't we be in a courtroom just going from one to the other and discuss it so that everybody knows what's being said in terms of the context of it, right? Because I'm on page 11 at, you know, number 35. A. When visiting John Duncan, everyone agreed that his disposition, and this was on January 16th, because he had been moved up to a room by that point, right? And they put him in a room. I'll read it to you. By January 16, 2015, Mr. John Duncan was transported to a room on an upper floor of the Surrey Memorial Hospital into an area that was shared by 3 other men. One man named Jerry had severe signs of dementia, but was quite agile for his age, and as Jerry wandered around the room, he would also talk to John Duncan. I have video of Jerry in the background when I did an interview with Uncle John, just as he was coming out of his, whatever it was that he had. But he still couldn't walk, right? Because, you know. Anyway, when visiting John Duncan, everyone, because he wasn't allowed to walk, people. He couldn't walk because he wasn't allowed to walk. And he seized up. And then they doped him up. And so he didn't feel it. And he didn't complain. And for the first week, you know, he hadn't been on drugs for 23 years. 20 years, people. He hadn't been on any kind of drugs for 20 years. So when they started giving them those OxyContins or whatever the fuck they were giving him, it whacked him back, okay? Because when he went in, he wasn't drowsy, he wasn't dopey, he was laughing, he was cracking jokes, you know? He was well aware of his surroundings. He obviously used a bedpan, so he couldn't have been that fucking loopy, because he was in the hall for 2 days with everybody else, with everybody rushing by the doctor's station there, and he was using a bedpan, so like, what the fuck, right? When visiting John Duncan, everyone agreed that his disposition had changed. I'm crossing this out, people, to where he was more lethargic. That's what drugs do. They make you lethargic. And less quick to respond, although he was still cognitive, talkative, and happy to see everyone from the Chorney family when they came to visit him at various times throughout the day. Judy Chorney tried to make sure that Mr. John Duncan had a visitor once or twice a day by her children, so that Mr. Duncan wouldn't feel abandoned by his family. Within that first week, though, and I have video, I mean, him stating that he wasn't really too sure who visited him from Victoria. In terms of, was it Debbie Duncan? Was it Eleanor? Was it, Elaine? You know, he just didn't really know who was visiting him when it came from Victoria. He confused them, right? Because I think they doped him up purposely. They probably made him sign things too while he was doped up. I wouldn't be surprised, people. Judy Chorney and her grandson, Andre Chorney, visited Mr. John Duncan normally every other second day because she was still recuperating from the flu herself. Judy Chorney was the main caregiver in the house, meaning she was responsible for completing household chores and other household activities that required time and energy. There was also a financial cost in terms of pay parking. But outside of that, my kids were going like between themselves 2 times a day. You know, like I said, it would be Shimei and Marcaine. It would be Tisha and Shimei. It would be me and Marcaine. It would, you know, at different hours though, right? And like, I don't know, I'm just drawing lines through it all. Through it all. I don't know how the court works. I don't know how we're going to talk about these things. And these are just minor things. These aren't important things. Because I'm drawing lines through important things too, right? You know, this is just general information, right? In terms of what was going on when he got to the hospital on a daily basis. Kind of like that, right? And there's just line after line after line. So how do you get to talk about this? I think that's why I came back into the camera here. How do you get to talk about this stuff? Right? Because they rush you. That Masters rushed me. That lawyer had everything already queued and ready to go. And she was in sync with the Masters where he'd mumble something and she, oh, yeah, no, I've got that. I've got that right here. He'd mumble something else. Oh, yeah, isn't that amazing? I got that too. Whatever those other 2 orders were, people, I never got a copy of them yet. I don't know what they are. They're still sitting at the courthouse. I guess I have to go downtown and pay for them and find out what they say. Because they mailed me one. They mailed me the one that says I have until the 15th of this month to hand this stuff in. And that I got 60 days after that to hand in my form with the documents listed. But the other 2 ones where I lose my signature and that this lawyer can do whatever she wants without my signature, I don't even know. I don't know. I didn't get that yet in the mail. They didn't send me that in email, and they didn't send it to me in the mail. And then whatever that other one was, I already forgot. Because remember, there were like 3 orders there. And I already forgot. So this isn't really going that well. Because if they don't want to take 3 hours to read something, they're not going to want to listen to me in court either. Because it's going to rock too many boats in terms of those house sales and those pension plans, stocks and bonds, and whatever else old people own that came up in a time when life was good. Unlike today, where life is not good.